Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, dealing head-on with South Africa's colonial history. We look into a student movement that wants to rid their campus of what they're calling racist icons. Today's show is inspired by University of Cape Town movement and a couple of social media hashtags. Here's our digital producer, Malika Bilal, with more.
Well, thanks, Femi. It started about 30 days ago with Rhodes Must Fall and Rhodes So White. So take a look. Together, those two hashtags got about 6,000 mentions after this statue of British colonizer Cecil Rhodes was defaced. And since then, those phrases have been used more than 35,000 times. Well, soon after, the protests spread to another university, this time in Durban, where this statue of King George V was covered in white paint. We're moving now south to Uitenhage, where members of the Economic Freedom Fighters political party got involved when they set this Boer War Memorial alight. But anti-colonial protesters are getting pushed back. On Wednesday in Pretoria, Afrikaans singer Sunat Bridges chained herself to this statue of former President Paul Kruger, protesting what she called vandalism of South African heritage. Now, this conversation is only growing both on the streets of South Africa and online, where we want to hear from you with hashtag AJStream.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm a proud beneficiary of affirmative action, and I'm in the stream.
South African students at the University of Cape Town want to rid their campus and curriculum of what they see as white supremacy and Eurocentrism. For about a month, students have been calling for the removal of a statue of British colonizer Cecil Rhodes. Now, online, their cause is prompting a much wider discussion on how universities can be more reflective of a diverse student body. Take a look at what UCT students have been up to.
Our living and learning spaces should be diverse and inclusive for all. Do not bring up the issue of let us preserve our heritage. When you created that heritage, we were not here. We were excluded from being here.
White South Africans, myself included, must be forced to become more empathetic, and that's through education.
We don't say that Rhodes must fall. What we say is he fell a long time ago, but UCT resuscitated him from the dead and put him in our faces.
We will no longer listen to your seminars. We have decided that this statue must go. We have decided that racism must go, and we will not be fooled.
So today we want to look at the Rhodes Must Fall movement and hear how the student experience could perhaps be improved for black students in South Africa and beyond. With us to talk about this, we have Kealeboha Ramaru, a University of Cape Town student and a member of the Rhodes Must Fall movement. Elawani Ramugondo is an associate professor of occupational therapy at the University of Cape Town. Wabantu Chlope is a student at Yale University and part of the Rhodes Must Fall Solidarity campaign. And in New York, we have Brian Quober. He is a PhD student and organizer of Oxford University's Pan-African Forum. Welcome, everybody. Let me start with Kealeboha. Kealeboha, from UCT, there's news today. News just in, which is what? Share it with us. Go ahead. About the statue on your university campus for UCT.
Okay. So today was the day that the council of the university sat down to take a decision on whether or not the statue should be removed from the campus grounds.
Yes.
And the council meeting started at around 5 p.m. and it's still continuing to this time.
Right.
The problem is that we've been getting mixed signals and messages from the university. The Vice Chancellor has indicated that he's going to take down the statue for sure.
Okay.
And then we were told that council has to make a decision. And then when we got to inside the building where the council meeting was happening,
right,
we were informed by the SRC president that the decision had already been made. And because of the impatience of the students thought that it would be a great thing to be present when a decision's been made on our behalf. Because it has been a general feeling that the way that the university system is set up, we as students are excluded when decisions are made about us. And
so Kiele Boha, let me just show here, because social media is a great thing. So via Twitter, I can actually show people what's been happening outside of this very meeting. Have a look here on my laptop, and there's some chanting and dancing. There's sort of willing for a certain decision to be made. Let me just go back to this statue, because it started off a big conversation. On the university map here, campus map, we've got the statue of Cecil John Rhodes here, Elawani. This is a statue you know well. When you go past this statue, what's the impact on you and other students, Black South African students? Can you explain to the rest of the world why it's been such a catalyst for this discussion?
I must just say that we commend students for having raised this conversation to this point where even academics who were affected but could not raise their voices and be heard could not stay silent anymore. This is a statue of a man who bullied others in order to amass resources that enabled him to take land from South African people, and to have a statue of him. And it's not only the fact that the statue is there, it's where it was placed. It's also the size. If you compare this statue with statues of those who were awarded with Nobel Peace Prizes, it's just
when you see it every day, it makes you feel what?
That it's a reminder that white people can take from Black people and will be celebrated.
So Wabantu, you heard Eliwani say that Rhodes was a person who bullied others. And I know that, of course, you went to UCT for a few months before you transferred to Yale. So I want to show you this tweet with that in mind. This is from Quentin, and he says, with all actions come responsibility. Do the students realize the importance that Rhodes played in the development of UCT? What would you say to that?
I think that the person who sort of sent in that tweet raises a very interesting question of whether we can necessarily assume that what's been given will sort of claimed to be given to the populace as what's been given by Rhodes supposedly has been claimed, whether we can consider that action legitimate. And I think the major problem that the students have raised is that despite Rhodes's contribution, let's say the donation of the land, for example, on which UCT stands, the biggest problem is that that land was stolen in the first place. So the suggestion is that what you're claiming isn't necessarily a fair stance, because considering the illegitimate nature in which that land was procured in the first place. But also secondly, no one is saying that that the students need to give up the land or get rid of everything that Cecil Rhodes was. The idea here is that the statue is a representation of a much larger discussion about creating an environment and an institution in which students, regardless of race, gender, class, can feel both welcomed and the institution cater to their various realities. And I think that's what really this debate is about. So perhaps the contributions of Rhodes will never be forgotten, but certainly we need to take actions to continue the struggle towards a greater sense of equality within South Africa.
Sure. Kiele Boha, I see you nodding there. Go ahead, Kiele Boha.
Well, I agree with Wabantu 100%. I think what we've been faced with as students is that there's been very little interrogation around the actions that we've taken as students and why we've taken those actions. I mean, we've had so many people say to us that we should consider that there would be no UCT without Cecil John Rhodes, which is quite untrue, because the university was long in existence before he donated the land, and he did not donate the land to the university. He donated the land to SACS, the South African College School, which they donated to the university. But also, it's important that we ask ourselves, whose land is this? Whose land? Where did he get the rights to own the land? Was there a willing buyer, willing seller, or was it done through great oppression, through killings.
Sure.
And through
You know, there are a couple of
displacement.
things that you're privy to that many people around the world may not be familiar with. So Cecil Rhodes, for instance, started off with the whole idea of segregation in South Africa. He also fronted up the mining industry. So De Beers, if you ever heard of De Beers mining, that is again attributed towards Cecil Rhodes. He was quite aggressive.
I actually come from
Kimberley, so you know that. So he has this incredible legacy, and it's quite a dark legacy if you look back in the history of South Africa. So here's the question, let's just push it past this statue, this man. How do you deal with history that you're uncomfortable with? That's what this movement is about, right? What do you do about that history?
Right. I think one thing as a student body that we're clear about, and many a times we are asked, so are you trying to erase history? The reality is that we cannot erase history, but we also don't have to praise and celebrate people who have in the past not been present or not created an inclusive society, which is what we're striving for. I think it's important that we are aware of the history, and if we did not have awareness of the history, we wouldn't see the need to do what we're doing here. And we want the university to also recognize that there is a history that they're not recognizing, which is African history. So many of the university buildings are built on the graves of slaves, but the university has failed to recognize that. And so I think, back to what one of the SRC presidents said, is about we need to start asking who's the keeper of our memory. We are at institutions that are keeping memories that don't belong to us, and our memories are rejected. And our memories we're being told that our memories are useless. And that's what we're saying, that as students, as a student of UCT, I should be able to work on the campus and not feel any type of shame. I should be able to be proud of every setting, of every space in the university, including in the classroom with the curriculum. I should be able to see a representation of myself from the people who are teaching me. And that is why I think the prof is correct when she says that it matters who teaches you.
Right.
And so that is why we've chosen the Cecil John Rhodes statue as a symbolism of everything that we stand for and everything we want removed from the university culture.
So Femi, I hear what Kielebo is saying, but you asked that question about what to do with this history. There's two competing answers online. So Martin says, it's statues now, but soon it could be paintings in museums, then books and libraries. This idiocy must stop. Rhodes must fall. He uses that hashtag, but he thinks this is the wrong way to go about it. On the other hand, though, there's the video comment. And Brian, I want you to have a listen to this from Joe and let me know what you think.
I am in Zimbabwe, formerly named Rhodesia, and I say put the statues of our colonizers in a museum. Statues represent our history, yes, but in Southern Africa, ours is a painful history of colonialism, slavery, mass murder, and rape through the subjugation of the Black African people. Monuments are a reflection of a society's cultural heroes. Why not have monuments to the actual heroes of our struggles? Sobukwe, Biko, Mandela.
So Brian, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on this program. It's an honor to be here with all the panelists. What I want to say is, as a student at Oxford University in Britain, there's even more symbols than we can even count. I mean, every college, every street has a symbol. And Rhodes, for example, has not only a huge house where the African Studies Library is actually housed, but there's the Rhodes Trust, which gives out all these Rhodes scholarships, mostly to privileged white men over the last century. There's a statue of Rhodes on the high street, and then there's many other symbols. For example, there's the Codrington Library, which is named for a slave owner who was a plantation owner in Barbados, and through the labor of enslaved Africans was able to extract wealth and then endow this library. So there's many things at Oxford that are quite similar and resonate with the struggle at Rhodes. And I want to say to the tweet that you just shared, first it's statues, then it's paintings, then it's books. There's an element of truth to that, which is that the whole university system is based around Eurocentrism and white supremacy and capitalism and all of these oppressive not just histories.
So Brian, I'm not going to let you get away with a big sweeping statement like that without giving me an example.
So
and
for
I'll
example,
be very happy to get in on that one,
Yeah.
Brian.
You let Brian off the hook. I want to hear Brian's. Let's hear what Brian has to say first, before you let him get off the hook. Brian, give us an example.
Okay, so for example, I'm in the history department, and in the history building, there's a room called the Trevor Roper room. Yes. Trevor Roper is this notorious Oxford historian who claimed that Africans had no history before Europeans come to Africa. Yeah. This is someone who was advocating these openly sort of racist and white supremacist views about history, and he's someone who's honored with his own room in the history department. Right. If you look at the curriculum, for example, whether it's history or English or philosophy or any other curriculum, you find that most of the authors that are taught are white, male, European authors, thinkers, and
Brian,
writers.
in the context of Oxford University in the United Kingdom, I understand why that is problematic for you, but also completely within context. If that's happening in South Africa, that is a major issue. Let me go across towards Elawani. Elawani, what did you want to add?
Absolutely, and it explains why, as Black academic staff members, we have rallied behind the cause raised by students. Because yes, it's definitely not only about the statue, it's about curricula, it's about the research that is prioritized, but not only how what the research that is prioritized is, but it is the juxtaposition of those prioritized research areas.
But Elawani, you're sitting right there. You're in the faculty. You're head of department. How do you change that then? Are you part of the problem or the solution?
I was head of the OT program until
OT program is
occupational therapy.
Yes.
Until 2013. I took sabbatical last year, and I'm back as just an associate professor.
Right.
But really, the research and juxtaposing it against who is in the academy really matters. Our Vice Chancellor has made statements several times about the areas that are prioritized and how those areas are important because of the challenges that South Africa faces. The African climate and development, poverty and inequality, safety and violence, school improvement. And those are really important areas to focus on. But if you think that only 21% of the academy is Black, it becomes very clear that the message is we do not need Black people at UCT in order to understand and respond to issues faced mostly by Black people. And that is problematic, and it does have consequences. When one looks very closely at how Black people are framed in this research, what emerges is that oftentimes Black people are framed as incapable of understanding their own problems and always in need of intervention from white people. The focus on violence ignores structural and epistemic violence, but emphasizes Black on Black violence, often a symptom of the other two kinds of violence. Poverty is researched often in isolation from land redistribution and rural development until Black scholars shift the discourse. So it does matter.
There's something about this movement that's really speeded things up or changed things on the ground at your campus. And I'm curious about this concept of transformation. It's a phrase that's used in South Africa a lot. And do you want to explain it for us, Kiela Boha, what this actually means, this transformation idea? Because this is what you want in your university.
So firstly, I think transformation, or the term transformation, is a catchphrase.
Right.
What we want collectively as Rhodes Must Fall and as Black students is the decolonization of our higher education institutions. All right, not just at UCT. UCT is considered to be one of the top, or the top university in Africa.
Yeah. So does that mean that then you need more, because I'm going to stop you every time you do a big sweeping statement, just so we can kind of get to the nitty gritty of this. So you need more black South African professors,
I
lecturers?
was actually building on that.
Yeah.
You know, being the #1 university in Africa, but having no representation of African knowledge in your university. I'm part of the I'm part of the gender department. I'm doing my honors in gender and transformation, and I can tell you that it's one of the only. Having done my undergrad in different parts of the university, it's one of the only and few departments that actually engages fully and interacts with with African literature, with African ideas, and actually approaches a lot of the issues that we're dealing with the mindset of it's a certain type of context. We're not stuck in Europe. We are in Africa, and so we need solution making that is effective in these spaces. And what it actually means is that I think on a greater scale, when we speak about the concept of decolonizing the university, it actually does speak to having more South African Black lecturers. And I use Black in the political term that Biko uses, where he includes all people of color or oppressed people. And we want. It's a shame that the university, the top university in Africa, does not have a single Black female professor.
Yet. I have a feeling there might be one quite soon. All right, hold tight for a moment, guests, just for a moment, because I'm just going to bring in the community as well, because they're eager to chat with you. Malika.
Well, picking up on that point that she just made, we actually got this picture tweeted to us. The stream can't independently verify this, but this is floating around online. This is Harold, who asked a question to UCT saying, how come there is so little Black African academic staff when UCT is on an African continent? And it shows a picture of the breakdown among races at the university. So you see something like this, Eleilani, and of course you're a professor. You sometimes also hear criticism, though, that there aren't enough people who are qualified to fill these roles. And what do you say when you hear that criticism?
Oh yeah, and that links to what our Vice Chancellor said yesterday at a panel discussion that was hosted by the Black UCT alumni. And he made a point that oftentimes Black academics arrive without much of a publication record and without having supervised PhDs. Which I found very interesting, because my own experience in selection committees, and I sit in many such committees, appointable Black academics for senior posts come with publications and a track record of supervising PhDs. Now, maybe he's talking about junior posts. And what we have noticed is that oftentimes those who come in at a junior level with publications already would have had access to support and gained some advantage, enabling them to compete successfully. Now, PhD candidates who are afforded opportunities to co-author with supervisors gain advantage when there is preferential treatment of white PhD students over Black students. Of course, the academy will remain white. And these are practices that keep Black academics.
Let's just hear from the Vice Chancellor of UCT. His name is Max Price. He's been mentioned a few times in this discussion. Let's hear about what he says about this whole idea of transformation on campus.
Some faculties have undertaken some significant curriculum transformation. The focus of research is very much on the issues that are challenges for South Africa and are addressing the issues of poverty and inequality. These are all dimensions of transformation. And with respect to the symbols, over the last 10 years, 20 years, we have changed or used the opportunity to name buildings, new buildings, and rename buildings that didn't have names in ways that reflect competing histories or different histories, the histories of different people on the campus. We commissioned a very large sculpture which stands next to the Jameson Hall called Hurikwacha, which picks up on the history and heritage of the Khoisan. We have named buildings after struggle heroes like Dalla Omar, First Minister of Justice, Biko, Sissy Gool, A.C. Jordan, Neville Alexander, and many more.
So, that is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. You should see some of the faces of our guests. I know they have issues with that comment. It comes courtesy of the Daily Vaults. Thank you very much for allowing us to share that clip with you. The conversation is not over yet. I'm taking all of our guests online to stream.aljazeera.com. Hopefully you will be able to join us there and continue this conversation. Meanwhile, let me tell you just briefly about our next show, we will be talking about hip-hop diplomacy. We will speak to rappers from around the world about their very unique brand of music and the messages they hope to spread. In the meantime, I'll see you online. Hope you can make it. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Streams Online Post Show. We're talking about South Africa's Rhodes Must Fall movement. Let's get right back to the conversation. Guess, is that the quickest half an hour that you've ever had in your life? Does it just fly by? I am amazed by the timing of this movement. What do you think happened and why it happened and why now? It's not like this situation is new in South Africa. Elawani, do you have a theory as to why now?
Well, the students have asked for a quantum leap towards transformation, and Kia Loboha saying that what we are basically demanding is for a decolonized UCT is also shared by Black academics. The VC admitted yesterday that while there may be units at UCT that are transformed, this is patchy. That cannot be acceptable. UCT had a vision to be a first-class African university already in the 90s with Dr. Mampela Rampela as Vice-Chancellor. It can only be through massive resistance at departmental, divisional, or program levels that we have not shifted.
I mean,
or that the African, in this African world-class university always had a Eurocentric interpretation.
Yeah, but it's the timing. I mean, people go, it's 21 years since the end of apartheid. Why is it now that Kilaba is just thinking, this is important? We have a movement and it's spreading around South Africa. The timing.
One thing that I want to say, and I hope I'll be allowed first to respond to the clip that we saw of the Vice Chancellor.
Yeah, of course.
I often find that clip or what he says very entertaining because it's one of the things that he says to us repeatedly as students to pacify us, that they've named all these buildings after these struggle heroes, Cecil, AC Jordan, and we're still waiting to see those buildings. We're still waiting to see those buildings.
So if I looked on the campus map, which I have in front of me...
You will still see BT. You will still see 2 buildings that are named, one building that's named after a Black person, which is the Steve Biko building. And then Horikwaho.
Oh, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that the argument he's making strikes me as this notion that, well, we're not racist because we also have Black people. I have Black friends too, and we've heard that from white people who want to claim that they're not racist by having Black friends.
He didn't quite. He didn't say that though, Brian, did he? He said that
that's the equivalent argument, and I think what we're asking for and demanding is that we shouldn't just have
naming
racist
a building
statues
is like having a Black
and
friend.
non-racist statues. We should get rid of all racist statues. We should get rid of all symbols of oppression, colonialism, white supremacy, and these things.
Well, Brian, I hear what you're saying, but I'm pushing back on that with this tweet because they're hearing our conversation and then they're responding online. So Peter says, colonialism happened. We can't just pretend it didn't with the Matlock dismantling of monuments. Brian?
Well, what I want to say is that colonialism happened and continues in a new form, which some of us call neo-colonialism. I mean, in Britain, for example, we have the Barclays Bank, which not only was invested in slavery and colonialism and apartheid, but is now the biggest owner of ABSA, the Amalgamated Banks of South Africa, which is the largest retail bank on the continent. So rather than return some of the wealth that it has looted in history, Barclays is actually continuing to exploit and extract wealth and profit from the labor of Southern Africans and Africans across the continent. So I think this notion that we're just dealing with history or just dealing with legacies of history, as opposed to ongoing economic and political realities that are lived experiences for Black students and students of color, is itself part of the problem. These are not just things from the 19th century or the 20th century. There's things that are happening right now today. We're living them, we're experiencing them. And just to make one final point, I think that's a kind of knowledge that needs to get more attention. And as part of what decolonizing the university means is it's not just book knowledge and academic and expert knowledge.
Yes,
it's also lived experience. We have oral traditions as Africans. We have oral histories. We have lived experience that doesn't
Brian,
count.
where is this happening? Where is this decolonization of education happening? Where you can go there. That's a good example. What they did there.
I think I might be able to help on that front.
Yeah,
actually.
go ahead.
So at Yale University, something that's been very interesting is that, because also there's a perception that for many minority students that perhaps in a sense colonization hasn't, well rather the equivalent effects haven't necessarily changed for them. And something that, for example, that's come out on campus is the missing departments altogether. There's sort of these fields of knowledge that simply aren't available to the wider student body. So, for example, there's recently been a movement on campus to say, well, we should have an Asian American studies department, or a Native American studies and department. So, what I would suggest, what I think is also a really important thing to understand here, is that the pool of knowledge to which we have access to as scholars must be broadened. And I think that this sort of saying that we have competing histories is already a problem. Because what you're saying is that one history it disagrees with the other, when in reality it's one history. These events happen and they happen simultaneously. And this notion that we must separate the two and say, well, this is what one side says and this is what the other side says, is already a problem. Because what you're saying is you're leaving out a huge chunk of what actually happened. So to that end, even if we think about it from a purely intellectual point of view, as people who are, I admit myself, I'm a nerd, for example, I think it would be abhorrent if we forgot all about Rhodes. But that's not the point of this movement. It's entirely to bring his legacy into context, to add all the relevant information that's otherwise been left out from curricula, from education.
Yeah. I just want to just speak on what Abantu just said. Yeah. I think from the movement and this idea of decolonizing the university, and this idea that because colonialism was given a physical start to end, that there is no continuation in it, in colonialism, and we see it in the university itself. I think as students, if we did not see the manifestation or colonialism inserting itself in our learning, in our interactions, then we wouldn't feel the need to mobilize around this cause where we want to decolonize our university. And just to answer your question as to why now, this is not a conversation that started now. And something very interesting is that this conversation of the curriculum at UCT is a conversation that was brought forward a long time ago by an African studies lecturer called Mamdani, professor.
Absolutely, the conversation, but let me just show you here. I mean, I don't need to show you because you've been in here. This is Bremner office no longer. This is Azania House. This is where all the students have been mobilizing and talking. And Elawani, I know you lectured there. So it's a seat of learning that's come about out of this movement. So there's momentum. So it's the momentum that I'm curious about, because back in the 1950s, actually, it was suggested that the Cecil Rhodes statue go then, in the 1950s. That was even before the end of apartheid.
I think why now? It's because it's the first time you see students, academics, staff members and workers mobilizing together for a greater cause and a mandate. For the past years, we've been mobilizing in isolation, and we've been seeing these issues, we've been seeing these things, and we've been speaking about them internally amongst themselves. But what we've done with Rhodes Must Fall is that we've opened up the space and said to the academics, as Transform UCT, you've been organizing around issues of Black academics and the exclusion of Black academics from the university. And we see it, we experience it, we know what it is to sit in a lecture room and for someone to say, well, I can't take this lecture serious because of their accent. And what does it say to us as aspiring academics at the institution, that there's a certain level of whiteness we need to get to be accepted and for our knowledge to be accepted at the university. And that is why we decided to approach the academics and say, can we bring the movements together to say to the workers that outsourcing is a terrible thing to have happen to the university, because the workers at the university report to this campus, but the university management refuses to take account or to be held accountable for the workers.
Okay.
So many workers have...
I've got 1 minute to go. I want you all to tell me what's the most important thing to leave our audience with Kiale Bahar, I just want to ask, how are your studies going while you're also part of this movement? How are they going?
How am I?
Yeah, studies. How are your studies going?
Oh, they're going well.
I sound like your mum. I sound like my mum now. Are you studying, dear?
I am.
Are they going well?
One of the great things about Azania House is that we've created study spaces.
Yes.
We have tutors coming in. We're actually starting a circle of Black tutors who are going to be assisting students.
I want you to be an A student as well as a revolutionary. All right, everybody, I'm going to give you one line. I gave you one line in the pre-show and you were brilliant at it. One line for our audience at home to remember this conversation by. Kiale Bahar, what's important for you? What's the one thing you want to leave our audience with?
That decolonization is possible and we're seeing it happen.
Brian?
I'd like to say decolonization of the universities is a global struggle and something that has impacts throughout the whole world.
Elawani?
Efforts to decolonize the curriculum and research liberate not only Black people, but also white people so they don't have to deal with their white guilt. In occupational therapy, we have seen it. You can follow our publications and you will see that we are publishing good work.
Wabanti?
The future of the economies and of basically the fates of the African people and of African students from all walks of life entirely depends on giving us an education that reflects our reality and allows us to deal with it and to fix it and to move forward.
Community?
I'll give you this last liner from Monday who says, colonial statues represent a dark history in South Africa, but not our heritage. Heritage and history are not synonymous. And I'll also tell you that the hashtag Rhodes is falling is now growing.
All right, thank you very much. I guess I could spend another 3 hours with you, but the internet will not allow me to do that. It's been a pleasure having you in this conversation. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care. Now, let me tell you about our next show. Hip Hop Diplomacy. We will speak to rappers from around the world about their unique brand of music and the messages they hope to spread. See you next time. Thanks for watching.